Hello everyone, thank you for joining us. Okay, we are seeing a lot of you are coming. We just wait 30 seconds for you all to be here. Okay, so let's start. So thank you everyone for coming in today, for joining us to our session on improving the visibility of Diamond Web publication, services and use case, which will focus on two tools and services, the Guide to Scholarly Indexes and the Diamond Discovery Hub. I am Marion Paulhac, I am the European Diamond Capacity Hub Community Manager, and I will be the one moderating today's session. So before we dive in, just some quick rules to follow. So please all mute your microphone during the presentation. There will be a time that will be reserved for discussion after each presentation, but feel free also to ask your question in the chat so that we can also answer them later. If you wish to speak, you can also raise your hand so that we know, and we'll let you hand the floor to you so that you can ask your question directly. And the slides and recording will be shared right after the webinar. And as the webinar is recorded, you can also turn off your camera if you don't want to appear. So our three speakers today, so a big thanks to all three of them who agreed today to join us and to discuss about this. So thank you to Arnaud Gingold, who is here and will be talking about the Guide to Scholarly Indexes, who is from OpenEdition and Opera. To Margo Bargheer from the University of Göttingen and Colin Sippl from the University Library of Regensburg. A quick introduction to our agenda today. So first, you will have a presentation of the Guide to Scholarly Indexes, which will be followed by some questions. Then the presentation of the Diamond Discovery Hub, and you also have some time for the questions. And then we'll move forward with the Diamond Discovery Hub use cases. The first one will be from OpenEdition about the data submission. And the second one will be from the Electronic Journal Library about the data collection. And we will have some time left to ask some more questions if you still have some. To give you some context. So the Guide to Scholarly Indexes and the Diamond Discovery Hub are both part of the European Diamond Capacity Hub. The Diamond Discovery Hub is one of our main services, and the Guide to Scholarly Indexes is part of our publishing tool services. Both EDCH services will be further developed as part of the AEGIS-OA project, which is a new Horizon Europe funded project that has been started since the beginning of the year. And its aims is to integrate and build on these existing resources, services, and tools that you can see and have on the European Diamond Capacity Hub website for the moment, and to upscale, refine, and streamlining them while aligning and collaborating with ongoing projects like Almazy. So our four main pillars for the project will be to extend quality and standard and notably to books, to support skills and training, to build tools and technology with the enhancing of the Diamond Discovery Hub, and to focus on sustainability. We have a powerful consortium in this project because we have 24 partners that are in 16 European countries. So as you can see, we have gathered a big consortium. And I'm going to stop now around AEGIS and the EDCH and give the floor to you, Arnaud, for your first presentation regarding the Guide to Scholarly Indexes, understanding and navigating the scholarly publication indexing landscape.
Yes, thanks. I'm just trying to put this in full screen mode to read better. Okay. Yeah, so hello, everybody. Thank you for being here for the presentation. So it's moving, and the slides. So sorry, Margo, could you put back? Thank you. Yes, so I will talk to you about the Guide to Scholarly Indexes, which is about helping publishers to navigate the complex scholarly publication indexes. So first, a few words of introduction. So like Marion already indicated quickly, so this is one of the outputs of the Craftway project, meaning the object already exists, and you can already have a look at it. So it consists of synthetic documentation on scientific publication indexes. We have currently 22 indexes described in this guide. So the the objectives of such a guide is to help diamond open access publishers, but obviously also any kind of publisher, but specifically the diamond open access publishers, first to grasp this diversity of the scholarly indexes, as most of you probably already know, there are very different kinds, different types, and the guide is here to help grasp that diversity. The objective is also to help publishers identify what index is more appropriate for their own contents, and then to find also all this information in just one place. So this was for the introduction. Thank you. So now some words about the scope of the guide, starting with some terminology, very quick considerations. So the diversity is also of these scholarly indexes related to the term that I use to describe them, especially the terms used by the services itself. And here we see that although these services may be similar in various ways, they don't describe them, they don't name them in the same way. So you can see here some examples on the slide. OpenEdiX called itself a catalog, CEL, a library, the OAJ directory, and so on. But the fact is that they have common aspects, and this is on these common aspects that we base our own description of the indexes. And the common aspects rely on the fact that they all organize list of standardized items, all aiming obviously at making publications visible, and they're all collecting metadata in various ways. So we thought that index would be the most acceptable broader term for all these services, in the sense that they all provide ordered lists of references which are precisely standardized items. So we know that especially in the library, not only library and publishing in general, index can have other meaning, but in the digital environment, an index is usually intended in that sense of ordered list of standardized items, especially in the database, let's say, environment, and this is what we are dealing with in this context. So that's why we chose indexes, just to clarify the specific use of this term in this guide. Next slide, please. So once we have the broader term to describe all this, we don't cover the diversity of these indexes. So for that, we established a typology, which was based on the consultation of existing classifications. So you have a few of them. You even have one on Wikipedia. There is a page of Wikipedia about that. And so we used the various existing classifications to establish our own, a bit more limited in terms of types, of number of types, and also maybe a bit more consistent in terms of the criteria that we used to name the services, to analyze the services. And you can see the criteria more or less summarized at the right of the slide. So we try to organize that. These types from the less to the more automated, open and technical processes. So first we have a type where the services use editorial and bibliometric criteria. Then a type where they use only editorial criteria, of course also use technical criteria, but they all use these indexes, obviously technical criteria, because they're technical operations, so I don't mention here there. And then we have the aggregator type, let's say, where you can have or not direct submission from the publisher. So you have the possibility to be harvested automatically or to submit your own repository. And then you have the fully automated aggregator, where you have most of the time no direct contact with the service, with the index. And then we added another type, which are the PID, registration agency. First, because they somehow are themselves an index in the definition, this quick definition that we gave just before, and also because they used a lot by other indexes. Just to give an example of an index, for instance, is using a lot Crossref. So even if it's not strictly speaking an index, it's something we thought was useful to mention also in the guide. So generally speaking, the idea is to give not just a classification just for the pleasure of creating classification, but it's because it has, as you can understand it already, a direct impact on what the publishers have to do based on these criteria, or what they don't have to do precisely. In the case of fully automated aggregators, for instance, they don't have to abide to editorial criteria. So this was the spirit of the classification, and this is the result that you can find here on the slide. So the first type, we call that selective bibliographic and bibliometric index, and with that we refer mostly to Scopus and the Web of Science, which are, as you know, pretty closed indexes. And then we have selective bibliographic index, and they are selective because the level of requirements is a bit high, but is much more open, obviously. And here's the case of PubMed or DOAJ. And we can include also in this type the DDH itself, which we will describe later, because you have also here some sort of a selection process. And then you have the automated aggregator, including submission, not necessarily, but including the possibility for submission. It's the case of OpenAir or Base, which for a part harvest directly the repositories that are available on the internet, but you can also submit like the URL of your own OAI PMH repository, for instance. And then you have the fully automated aggregator, mostly, fully automated aggregator. The typical example is obviously Google Scholar, but you have to prepare your data. You have technical requirements to be harvested or trawled by Google Scholar, but you don't have direct contact with Google Scholar itself. And then the PID registration agencies, we have here described in the guide currently Crossref and DataCite, which are the most important ones, obviously, in our context. Thank you. We can move to the next slide. Thank you. So this was about the general scope and the definition of the guide. So now, what is the content? What do you find in the guide to scholarly indexes? So you will find a summary of editorial and technical requirements, and where you will find the main characteristics of the indexes, some links to the documentation, technical documentation especially, but it's not a step-by-step instruction guide for joining the index. It's rather an orientation tool to help you precisely navigate the landscape of the scholarly indexes. It currently exists in two formats. One that we call the knowledge base, and it's basically an Excel spreadsheet containing tabs for each index. And then we have also a GitHub repository, where which contains the exact same content. It's just an export from the knowledge base. And here you have one file per index, and you find it on the authorized GitHub space. Just to mention, for now, these two guides are both in English. Then we can move just to have a quick, not even overview, just a quick look at the two formats. So this is what you find in the knowledge base. So here it's not the Excel format, it's the Google Drive format, but it doesn't matter, it's the same. content. So you have here just a basic table with columns. You can see on the left the fields that we have to describe the guide, then the content, the column with the content of the information corresponding to the fields, and then also a column indicating the source of the information. And yes, that's how the knowledge base looks like, basically. That we can have on the other slide how it looks like. Thank you. And it looks like on the GitHub repository. So here, like I said, it's a specific file for one index, and here instead of columns, you have a series of tables. So this is how it looks like. Then we can go a bit deeper into the content, the organization of the content of the guide, or each entry for the indexes. So the idea, like I said at the beginning, is to provide the information just one place, and we also provide information just one place and in just one template for all the indexes, precisely first to facilitate the understanding of the services characteristics, but also to facilitate comparison between the various services. So the idea is that the 22 indexes that are listed there on the slide all come into this structure, global structure. So we have first service description, which contains global overview of the index. Then we have the section service provision, which gives more detail about the characteristics and the features of the service. Then we have a specific section dedicated to the inclusion process, that is mostly the procedures and workflows to get into contact with the index. And then probably the most important section when it comes about being indexed in specific index are the minimum requirements. So it can be editorial requirements or technical requirements. And then we have a section for what we call generically the additional criteria, and here it's criteria that are recommended or optional. It's mostly about best practices. And then we have the information sources, which are maybe not that important for the users themselves, but it's important at least for us to know where we found the information in the first place, and it's useful to make some updates. So now we can dive deeper into the content of these sections. So the first one, service description. So you won't see here, I guess, on the slide all the specific fields, but basically here we have the index identity card containing general and administrative information like the year of launch, the owner of the index, and that is important because obviously it's different if it's a private owner and it's for or not for profit, that kind of things. You have also information about the access for users in reading or for providers with writing rights to the index. You have the number of resources, and you have also the links to technical and general documentation. This is where you may find what we don't provide with the guide, that is a step-by-step documentation when they do exist, obviously. So that was for service description. Now, in service provision is precisely like the expression tells about what is provided by the index. This is where you find the type of index that we mentioned before in the classification slides. And you have element of information about the content, the concrete content of the index. That is, what is the content type, content language, graphic and geographical scope, and there is. You have also the index sources we always have the index sources when we know it, because information is not always easy to find, and you have the supported standards. So the supported standards are the standards that the index can deal with. It doesn't mean that it is the standards that all the publishers have to follow. It's just to give information about what the index does or is able to do. So next slide, please. Then we move to a bit more pragmatic sections about the inclusion process. So it is giving information about how to be included in the index. So here it's more about the interaction with the index. It's not already about data submission or metadata submission. So it's more about the options and conditions to join the index, and specifically this is where you will find the link to the application form, again, when it exists. When you don't have application form, you may have like a contact email, for instance. And you have also general information about the metadata or data collection process, how it is collected, and through which protocols, let's say, which operations. And then we move to the minimum requirements. So here, like I said before, we list. So here it's about how to be concretely indexed in the service. So here we find the editorial requirements, and here we try to be as precise as possible from the information that we get on websites, but also not too exhaustive when there are many requirements. But we try in the guide to be as exhaustive as possible. Yes, using kind of an arbitrary limit, but we want to give the most information possible to give precisely the publisher a good idea of what is expected from them. We have also the data and metadata requirements. So it can be requirements about the format file, it can be requirements about the standard to use, and it can be also obviously about the list of minimum metadata expected by the index. And then you have, on the next slide, thank you, like I said before, best practices recommendations. So here also you have the same distinction between editorial and technical requirements. And it's about mostly extended metadata, like for instance, time coverage, geographical coverage. So this kind of metadata that are not mandatory, that are not blocking metadata to be indexed on the service, but which obviously improve the findability of your content. Then you may have also other kind of recommendation, like the one related to the user experience on the website. And then in conclusion, the prospect for the guide related specifically to the AEGIS project. So, like I said, the object already exists. It's already rather complete. Also, it's stable in terms of templating, in terms of content. But I just so yesterday I still already have some updates to make. But anyway. There are things that can be improved in two areas, mostly the one related to readability and usability, and the other one related to what we can call impact and coordination. So in terms of readability, obviously the table, the Excel sheet, or even the GitHub repository are not the most readable tool. So we thought about using the GitHub repository to build on this browsable version, something that would look like a website with a browsable menu on the left. It will look a bit more like a book, an online book, and also it will allow to manage more easily the translation of the guide. And in fact, this is one other aspect included in AEGIS to translate the guide in other languages. It's in English. We started the translation in French. We hope to extend a bit more, even at least starting with these two. We also envision, with no certainty at this stage, because we need to evaluate what is necessary or not, but to create a step-by-step documentation for some indexes. And then in terms of impact and coordination, so there is obviously the idea to add new indexes, depending on the community preference actually, but we already have some leads on that because some indexes were planned within Craftware that were not described there. And there is also the objective to provide a training specifically for the guide that could be at some point included in the EDCH. And then there is a more technical possibility to align better with the Disco plugin that should be mentioned a bit later in the presentation. So I don't go into more details about that, and I think I can close here for the guide. And here you can find the most important links regarding the guide. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Arnaud. You can find then all the links that can be related to the guide here, with the Google Drive, the Endo, the GitHub, and also there is a special place on the EDCH forum about the guide when you can ask questions. And the contact address of Arnaud if you need to contact him further after this webinar. I don't know if there is some question on the chat. Not yet. Do you have some question? If you have some question, please write them on the chat. We have some time now to answer them, or you can just raise your hand and we'll hand over the floor to you for your question. Can you have the links on the chat? Yes, we are going to send them to you right after so that we can all link on it. Click on it, sorry. If there is not more questions for you, Arnaud, I'm going to say thank you a lot, Arnaud, for that. So if you have any more questions, feel free to write them on the chat because Arnaud is still here and can still answer them. And otherwise, go into the forum or contact Arnaud directly using his email address. Thank you all. And now we can move forward to our next presentation, which will be about the Diamond Discovery Hub, a service dedicated to Diamond Open Access journals. And I'm going to hand over the floor to you, Margo. Thank you for being here. And please, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I'm sorry that I wasn't here in the beginning, but now I'm here and I'm going to talk about the Diamond Discovery Hub. Next slide, please. So what is the Diamond Discovery Hub? It's a collection of journals where we can apply community-approved criteria for Diamond Open Access. Because some of you, especially those who are deeper into Diamond Open Access, you know that this term is still discussed. Institutional publishing without cost for the authors or editors has been around since the beginning of open access, but then it was called institutional publishing, or it was preprint servers or whatsoever. And now, especially that the commercial sector is moving itself into a crisis with ever-growing prices and ever-growing pressure on authors, we see that there is something like a renaissance of the institutional publishing, and nowadays we call it Diamond Open Access, meaning that it's not just the absence of fees, but that there is more to it. And I will explain our criteria in a bit more detail later on. But first of all, so this is a collection of journals that comply to several criteria and standards around scholarly publishing. By now, we have almost 4,000 fully Diamond Open Access journals indexed in the Diamond Discovery Hub. And the idea is that it's not some group of people who in some secret way decides yes or no, but that this is a community effort from the community for the community. So the idea is that those sources that publish or host Diamond Open Access journals can be listed and then feed their data into the Diamond Discovery Hub. So yes, we give guidance, but it's not us being some secret evaluation agency, but this is a service from the community for the community, and that's why it also makes sense to embed it in our permanent collective, the European Diamond Capacity Hub. Next slide, please. Why do we have this? I mentioned this already, that institutional publishing has been around for many, many years, really decades. And especially in the Global South, this is the most prominent model for scholarly publishing. So the idea that university libraries bring a lot of money to commercial and profit-oriented publishers to do open access, this is only in part of the world, the standard model, and it costs a lot and it brings a lot of problems with it. So if institutions decide that they will invest, and I mean mainly invest resources, expertise, and staff hours, that they invest into infrastructures for publishing, that they should also be recognizable as such. So that Diamond Open Access journals also deserve their own collection. Because yes, we have most of these journals also on DOAJ and also in other databases, but Diamond Open Access really requires quite some effort from editors and from institutions. So it deserves its own recognition. And especially the journal aggregations that we have around, they were not specifically designed to highlight Diamond Open Access. They usually started with a different use case. And so this one, the Diamond Discovery Hub, has a specific use case highlighting Diamond Open Access journals. Who's benefiting from it? Of course, the DOAA practitioners, the editors, the authors, institutional publishers, but also libraries who, for instance, are monitoring the progress of institutional publishing, or who would like to identify whether this is a journal that they voluntarily support. It also helps funders to see where Diamond open access journals find their place to show them, to display themselves. And of course, it also helps the trusted sources, university presses, learned societies, other infrastructures, that they have their own place to be visible with their own journals. But this is not only for them, or not only for the Diamond open access use case, and I'll be talking about this later on. Next slide, please. How does it work? Our first clearance step is always the EDCH registry. And once you can register yourself there, you can express whether you want to be a trusted source for the Diamond Discovery App, which includes, for instance, that you should have a publishing program. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense to express your desire to be a trusted source. And then you check you are in your own responsibility for checking your journals, or the ones that you are responsible for or that you're hosting, to check whether they adhere to the 6 criteria. Next slide, please. Our first criteria is persistent identification. That's an ISSN. That's straightforward. Without a persistent identifier, we can't do much, and no matter what kind of a registry it is. So that's a requirement. It also goes hand in hand that this is one of the data signals of a scholarly journal showing that they are serious about what they do. And you'd be surprised, there are still scholarly journals around without an ISSN. So that's a basic benchmark. If you have an ISSN, one of 6 criteria is ticked. Next slide, please. The second one we look out is for scholarly journals, because one of the negative legends around Diamond open access publishing is, that's all this little bullshit and nobody cares about because it's not really scholarly content and it doesn't really add to the scientific discourse. So we said, even though we don't really want to judge what scientists use to publish and to read and to interact with, when it comes to building up a collection of Diamond open access journals, we insist that it has to be a scholarly journal. Next slide, please. And the ones that we take into Diamond Discovery Hub have to have open access with open licenses, and straight from the start. So not kind of, free to download after several years. That's not Diamond Open Access for us. Diamond Open Access it's clearly marked as open access, meaning that it also complies with copyright law and uses licenses that are accepted in the open access field. Next slide, please. And here, no fees. That's a no-brainer in our sense, but we also control for hidden fees. So does DOAJ, which really helps because journals that are already listed in the DOAJ will usually fulfill already these 3 criteria. Meaning that if a journal is in DOAJ, no fees, scholarly journal, ISSN, most of the work is done already. Next slide, please. Here is something that we identified. This is one of the quality signals for scholarly journals, is that they will be open to all authors. Open to all authors doesn't mean that a journal can't publish in Danish language or in Sami language, but it means it also accepts submissions from authors who are simply approaching the journal and say, I am within the scope of your journal, I do speak Danish and I do know about your topic, and I can contribute to this journal with an article, and then we consider it open authorship. Because there are also important and good scholarly journals around that, for instance, will limit their authorship to members of a faculty, only PhD students, only attendees of a conference, And then we would say it's not open to all authors, and then it's maybe a good scientific journal, but then it doesn't fulfill all 6 criteria of the Diamond Discovery Hub. Next slide, please. Our last one is the definitely most challenging one to check. It's if you, for instance, go through the offers of MDPI or Springer Nature or other commercial publishers, they will always offer to learned societies or other stakeholders, if you bring us 40, 50,000 euro per year, we run a Diamond Open Access journal for you. If the learned society stays in control and nevertheless says, yeah, we have so much money left over, we can afford this, then we would still accept that it's a community-owned journal because the learned society would consider as being in control. But if you look at the journal lists of Springer Nature, for instance, you'd also find journals that are, for instance, sponsored by a ministry of or by the petrol industry lobby organization or whatsoever. And there we do want to make a difference and say, that's not what we consider institutional or scientifically led or community owned publishing. And Diamond Open Access, the way we understand it, means science is in control. So community owned is a bit challenging, but we do have a lot of guidelines and helps and examples. And if in doubt, there is always the forum on the EDCH to discuss these things. Next slide, please. You could do this all manually, going through all your journals one by one. Or if you run an OJS platform, you could also use the Disco plugin. Disco plugin stands for Discoverability Companion, and this was developed in our CraftOA project. And that is a plugin that you can enable within your OJS instances or instance, and make sure that these criteria are described in a way that you or also machines can easily understand, yes, this journal complies to these standards. Of course, there is always human evaluation needed because especially these issues around open authorships and community ownership, this is not a either or. This is often a continuum where you need to make a decision. Sometimes the decision is very easy, sometimes it's more complicated. But we do think that on a technical level and also on a machine readable level, we can support this with, for instance, the Disco plugin. Next slide, please. Here's a screenshot that the Diamond Discovery Hub is not just standing there by itself, but that we also provide the data for reuse. And reuse means, for instance, that other aggregations can pick up the signal of Diamond Open Access, or the signal of is also listed in the Diamond Discovery Hub, because this is all these listings, whether you're listed in DOAJ or in Mirabel or in the EZB, the Elektronische Zeitschriftendatenbank, where Colin is by. Maybe you can wave once, Colin, so that everybody knows I'm talking about your service. And do we have somebody from Mirabel here present? So be praised. All these services are wonderful, and these services can pick up data signals from others if the data is provided in an interoperable way. And this is where we really think it's quite important that indexes have been really good in exchanging data and also telling you this is also listed here and there, because this all adds to the judgeability of journals and also to their recognition, because it means something if a journal is also listed in the area, in the Norwegian index or in the Diamond Discovery Hub index. Next slide, please. And that is basically what I wanted to tell you. We have a website. I am the person helping you onboarding if you are an interested, trusted source. And feel free to reach out if you don't really know whether you are eligible for the Diamond Discovery Hub. We help you because this is a community service from the community for the community. And with that, I'm done.
Thanks a lot, Margo. Is there any question for you on the chat? Yes. So, Margo, there is a question from you. as I'm going to read to you. So some journals enjoy a large degree of autonomy within an institutional publisher. Can a Diamond OA journal apply to the DDH even if the IP itself is not working towards actively supporting Diamond OA? In other words, can the journal staff be the trusted sources of its own content and publishing process?
We have been discussing about this a lot. And then I came to an analogy from biology. So we define, for instance, a living organism as an organism that has cells. And we can also say, yes, a living organism is also an organism that has only one cell. And that's the minimum standard, meaning that a journal can be its own trusted source. It's a bit complicated for us to evaluate this, but it works because what we usually have is a journal is not something that drops from the sky. A journal will always have people behind it. There's always a human taking over responsibility. And if there is a human or a group of humans who say, yes, we are the ones who do this, it's not so important that a journal needs a publisher, but a journal needs some manifestation of a human interaction. And it needs to be traceable who is behind a journal, because that creates our trust into the content, that we know somebody has selected the content, somebody is making sure that the quality assurance processes are in place. So yes, individual journals can register, but not as the journal itself, but the human beings who are behind a journal, they need to register. And if they are accepted as a trusted source, then we can onboard their journals.
Thank you, Margo. And there was another question for Arnaud, which is a bit anticipating the next one. Is OpenEdition, working to facilitate journal inclusion in DDH?
Not yet, but in fact, it's a plan. You will understand the answer. In fact, with the presentation, it's something that is planned. For the moment, we had mostly, let's say, technical. Way to deal with the things, analyzing mostly metadata, having some contact with some publishers. But in fact, there are plans for to contact the publishers that the open edition publishers, obviously, only that don't already completely respect completely match rather the criteria of the DDH. You should know also that at least at this stage, you have the possibility to respect only 5 from the 6 criteria. The first 4 ones are mandatory, and then you have the option to have one of the other 2 that is community owned and open to all authors, I think. And so you can be on the DDH with only 5 criteria, but the objective is to close that possibility and to have only 6 criteria drawn on the DDH. And precisely this is where we could do some work at OpenEdition and other trusted platforms with their own publishers to precisely help publishers that have only 5 criteria to move to 6, and obviously also to have the ones that don't even have the 5 criteria to match the full 6 criteria. But again, you will find more explanation on the operation specific use case about that in the next presentation.
Thank you, Arnaud. I had another question about whether the DDH was bilingual. Do you indicate when a journal is bilingual? And that was answered by Arnaud, who said that no, at the moment, that information is only collected in the metadata. I have another question for you, Margo. Is the Diamond Discovery Hub open to a journal outside Europe, and can a library having a hosting journal program register as a trusted data source?
That's an interesting question, and I think it's quite important, the question. Why is the Diamond Discovery Hub for the time being European? It has a few reasons. One is we need to be able to judge the potential trusted sources. And we do have a network of editors and people helping us and representatives of the community. And we know pretty well our European community. So we know where to reach out and asking, could you do us a favor and evaluate the Serbian trusted source or the Ukrainian. And so we decided that for the time being, we stick to Europe, not because we think Europe is better than the rest of the world, but only this is where we have a trusted network and where we know we can collaborate. And yes, we could be easily rolling out this service and just saying, yeah, why don't we take Latin America and parts of Africa in because they speak the same languages as we do. But then the question would be, who are we to decide which rest of the world, which parts of the rest of the world can be in our index or not? That's why we said, okay, let's, for the time being, stick to Europe. There are plans, and there is a project going on. It's the Almasi project, a Europeanly funded, where we will roll out beyond Europe. And our approach is if, for instance, and I'm making up an example now, if there's a large publishing platform and it has 25 journals from its own country and hosting one African journal, and this one African journal slips in, then it doesn't matter because obviously the trusted source is based in Europe, has decided they want to upload this, and then we wouldn't take this journal down. But currently, we are not encouraging beyond Europe to upload because we also want to test the service. We want to see whether our community evaluation approach holds. And it will be opening up later on, but for the time being, it's Europe. Does that answer your question?
I think it does, Margot. Thanks a lot. I have another question also for you, Margot. And I think it was also answered by Maxime, but it was, is the Disco plugin available for OGS Next LTS? And Maxime answered that the developer said the uptakes will be provided. So we think yes, but we are not entirely sure yet.
It's for 3.5, and there won't be, as far as I know, there won't be changes in the LTS version to what this has been developed for. So if you are a really good coder, you can probably also adapt it to versions below, before 3.5. And as far as we know, it will also hold for version 3.6, the one that is coming out around Open Research Europe. But I mean, these plugins that we developed in the Craft-OA project, they have been developed by really highly experienced OGS developers. So they will make sure that these plugins are not collapsing when there is a new version in place. And if you have some coding capacities, you can always adapt this. And as far as I know, the Disco plugin can be, with a bit of coding, also adapted to other software because the main work for a plugin also is always the conceptual thinking.
Thank you, Margot. And I have one last question also for you. How can I submit a journal for the DDH if I don't have the Disco plugin installed?
There are lots of other ways to do it. It doesn't require the Disco plugin. So if you have just one or two journals, you might just use an Excel sheet, or which we all provide in a very standardized form, or there's a web form where you can fill it in. It can be also done if you use our journal metadata exchange format for describing the metadata of your journal. That is another plugin that you can use, but you don't have to. You can also, if you have, for instance, a large number of journals and you are anyway used to having to map your metadata schemes to the requirements of some other index, then you can also map them to the requirements of the Diamond Discovery app. And there are some technical guidances and technical help available for this.
You're muted, Marion.
Yeah, sorry. I had to mention at the same time, said it. Thank you, Arnaud. So we have time for one more question if you have one. Otherwise, thank you, Margot. And we will go to the next presentation. That will be you again, Arnaud, because we are now going to dive into the Diamond Discovery Hub use cases. And the first one will be from OpenEdition about the data submission and about the data submission process. The floor is yours, Arnaud.
Thank you. So yes, this will be obviously a complement to what Margo just explained, especially about the criteria. And yes, so I will present you how OpenEdition dealt with this data submission process. So first, a few words about OpenEdition. It is a French infrastructure for open electronic publishing, specifically in social sciences and humanities. The infrastructure provides 4 platforms. One is called Calendar, it's for scientific events. Another one is for scientific blogs, and it's called hypothèse.org. And then we have one platform for the books and one platform for the journals. And obviously, this is the one we will consider here for the DDH. So the OpenEdition journal platform hosts currently 673 journals of both national and international publishers. And in fact, when you mentioned journals outside of Europe, in some cases, we have validated some journals for the DDH because they were related to a French institution, for instance. So there are still some marginal adaptation in some cases. Next slide, please. So the contents that we are dealing with here at OpenEdition, so it's journals, like I said, we have a variety of disciplines. We have all fields of social sciences and humanities represented. We have also a variety of accesses. We have full open access, most of the time diamond open access. We have also freemium open access. So in our case, premium open access correspond to the possibility to have a direct access to the HTML version and a subscription access to the PDF or the EPUB. And this is a program dedicated to university libraries. And we have a few also journals under embargo. So these ones were obviously excluded from the DDH submission. And we have also a variety of geographical areas. Like I said, we have journals in Europe, Africa, and America. And so it's thank you for moving. No, it's okay. So it's a rather big amount of journals to check, and that's why it was a rather long process in our case. Just to mention also that until now, OpenEdition, I think, represented kind of a specific case in the DDH trusted sources organization, in the sense that precisely we are dealing with lots of journals, but also journals coming from various publishers that are also themselves referring not only to OpenEdition, but also to university institutions, that kind of things. But it's probable that in the future, and I guess it's already starting now, other use cases of trusted platforms will resemble a bit more OpenEdition. So here is just the general view of the workflow of the data submission. It seems complicated, but it's a rather traditional way of doing things. But it was just to show also it's not completely straightforward when you're dealing with lots of journals. Also with a rather big organization, OpenEdition has I think 70 employees within diverse departments. So it's a bit of a complicated process, even if traditional. So now we will review that step by step. We have 3 steps. So the first one, next slide, please, is what happens internally at OpenEdition, the beginning. So first we select the open access journals. Like I said, we exclude the ones under embargo. And from that, we have a first automated extraction of the metadata from the database. This is done by the OpenEdition data department. And after that, we start to work on the analysis of this extraction against the DDH criteria. And this is done in collaboration with the OpenEdition journals department. And in that stage already, we may have, that's why I put it into brackets, some metadata update, because from the extraction, we can realize that some metadata is not up to date. So it's another side effect, let's say, of the analysis, and a good obviously a side effect, because it has to have updated metadata. So this is the first step internal to the OpenEdition. Then the second step, thank you, is rather related to, let's say, the DDH EDCH interaction. So it relates to what Margo mentioned before. So the criteria analysis happens internally, but also obviously it can happen at the same time with relation with the EDCH environment. So first we have very rich, I have to outline it, documentation about the DDH analysis validation process. So you have the guidelines based on the criteria themselves, and you have also FAQ on more specific aspects, and you have also the EDCH forum where you have a more dynamic, in that case, exchanges with the community for some edge cases, for instance. So this is the second step. I mentioned also that during the Craftware project, we even have dedicated meeting to first align the use and the application of the criteria. So now we don't need that anymore. It was at in the preparation phase. Let's say now we have the FAQ, we have the EDCH forum, we have the guidelines, and I think it's very good like this. And then we move to the next and last step, obviously. So the first one is not a big one, but just because we mentioned it, and because it adds another step, because obviously the metadata we got at OpenEdition isn't directly usable by the DDH, and especially because the DDH uses a specific metadata format, which is called GEMF, which stands for Journal Metadata Exchange Format, if I remember well. And so this is the last step that we take at OpenEdition before sending the metadata. So we take all the validated metadata, that is the one containing the PIDs and so on, plus the DDH criteria information, yes or no, if it's validated. And then we send that to the DDH platform on the DDH platform. And in our case, we use the CSV file. It was one of the options that I mentioned, Margo. You have others, but then this is the one that we use. And after that, the data is automatically, I need to say, published on the DDH with some feedback, but rather minimal at the moment, but it's something we're working on for the future. So this is the full process. Then we can move to a bit more information about the validation process out of OpenEdition. So like I said, and then like you've seen, I guess, from the workflow representation, we had mostly a technical review of the metadata itself. We didn't have that much in the interaction at this stage with the publishers themselves, because we had a lot of journals to check, and also because we needed to set up the workflow ourselves before involving other people in it. And so we make the validation mostly ourselves at OpenEdition. So just to classify a bit the things. So first we have something I would call the technical criterion, it should be, I guess, about the persistent identification. This is something that is mandatory at OpenEdition, so this is validated automatically. Then we have what I would call the true-false criteria. It is respected or not. So we have the aspect about the scholarly aspect of the journal. And the majority of open access journals ensure indeed a form of evaluation. You will see in the guidelines, I think also Margo mentioned it, we have some latitude of interpretation about this scientific evaluation. We just make sure that there is one scientific evaluation. Then open access with licenses since 2-3 years. I think OpenEdition precisely implemented a licensing policy for all its contents, not only journals, by the way. And in that case, it's also covered. We only have some update issues in some cases. About the no fees criteria, it's also condition to access to join the access the OpenEdition journals platform. It's just like Margo was mentioning, in the case of the DDH, we don't just check if there are no APCs, but that there are no hidden fees of any kind. And for that, we need to review a bit more in detail, but in the review that we made, we just saw one exception. So even if we cannot automatically validate it at the moment, because it's not information that we require in that sense at OpenEdition, besides the APC, I mean. we need to review that. And then there is the open to all authors criteria. And even if it's not phrased exactly in the same way in the journal's inclusion process at OpenEdition, we have we have a similar requirement for this. So this also is globally okay, even if we always need to check. And then we have the open criteria of the community-owned aspect, dimension. And here the main issue, like Margo already indicated anyway, it's often either not mentioned or mentioned but not clearly, and especially the ownership nature is not always clear, either clearly expressed or easy to understand. So precisely, we can move next to the next slide to see now. So this was the validation process, and you can see globally at OpenEdition, most of the journals respect it, but we have some exclusions. So the first one relate to the scope, so precisely what is beyond not only Europe, but what we use in the European research area, but basically it's the same. So we have some journals that were out of scope for this reason, so the geographical aspect. We have also excluded discontinued journals, even if they were diamond at the time, the information is not up to date, so we don't include that in the DDH. It's a picture of the current state of things. So we don't have that. These ones were excluded. We also obviously excluded the journals that didn't match the criteria. So it was the case, some journals that are not owned by the community. So it's not exactly the cases. It corresponds more or less to the cases that Margo mentioned. In some cases, it seems that the community has the ownership, but it's not really the case. On the other hand, you may have some private associations that are indeed representing the community. These ones are validated. We also had the cases of some publishers that were actually single individuals, so we couldn't validate that also. And then, like I was already indicating, we had some missing information. So, like for the peer review process or the identification of the owner, and this is the most challenging in the validation of the criteria, because we don't always have the information, and when we have it, even when we have it, it's not always clear. This is this interpretation process that takes some time. But anyway, we went through all this review. Yes, you can move. Again, thank you, Marion. We went through this validation process, and we made the last upload in January of this year. It was globally 8 months work, again, because we had many journals to review, and also because we needed to set up the workflow. But now that has been done for the almost 600 journals, open access or freemium open access journal. About 100 were excluded, about 500 were validated. And now currently they're all published on the DDH. The record and the metadata record at least are published on the DDH, but more than 100 are not directly managed by OpenEdition, because there is also this aspect on the DDH about the trusted platforms, the trusted sources that can register themselves and that can take the responsibility of the metadata record management, because as we've seen before, you have many actors. You have the publishers, you have the publishing services like ourselves, OpenEdition, and then you have also the institutions behind. It can be university presses or other kind of public institution consortium or groups, and all these entities could be in the trusted sources for the DDH. So in fact, some of the journals were already submitted by other institutions or for various reasons. And this is the current situation. So this leaves us with some open questions. So it was a very satisfactory work globally speaking. I think it's an improvement for OpenEdition to have these journals, these diamond journals, clearly indicated as diamond. We didn't do what did already others, like EZB, for instance, in adding a small diamond logo, DDH logo, but we should do that at some point. We still have open question though. It's first about the update. process, the internal update process, because we have set up a workflow, but we have files that are not completely manageable. So this is something to improve, especially for the update, especially if we don't manage some records. So we need to coordinate with the other trusted sources. And this is one other open question precisely, because it's something we want to set up to include these actors coordinating publishers at a national level, and to coordinate precisely also the submission to the DDH. And so OpenEdition did that for its own collection, which covers a lot, but not all, obviously, publication in the French context. So it's something we have to organize, and it's included also in the AEGIS project to an extent. And another open question. Excuse me, yes, because I jumped to one. The last point, the last thing, it's also in the AEGIS project, is to try to improve the DDH management space, which at the moment is a bit minimal. And because you see, when you are an organization dealing with lots of journals and with lots of actors, you need to have a dedicated management space, I think. But we discussed that precisely at the beginning of the week together with Margo and Dominic and other people from the AEGIS project. So this is it for OpenEdition. Thank you.
Let me find my mic. Thank you, Arnaud. Is there any question for Arnaud about the data submission process? I don't see any question for the moment. Thank you a lot, Arnaud, for both your presentation. And now we can move forward to our next slide, and I will stop my screening, Colin, to give you the floor. And please, Colin, you can go ahead and present EZB. I think there is a question for you, Arnaud. In the meantime, that is, the one-person publisher is not allowed to be indexed in the DDH, or it is just that you could not find more details about the publisher. So it's perhaps a question for Margo or you, Arnaud.
Do you want me to answer orally, or I answer by writing?
You can answer it in 1 minute before
Yes,
Colin.
no, it was, I mean, a single person, the publisher. So it was like an individual initiative. It's not we didn't have the information. Is that it didn't represent a community. It represented itself, himself. I mean, I hope it's more clear.
Thank you, Arnaud. If there is any more question, you can write them in the chat and we can answer them in the chat. Or if we have still some time left at the end, we'll answer them at the end. And now I hand the floor to you, Colin. Thanks you a lot. And you will talk about the electronic journal library.
Yeah, thank you, Marion. Thank you for inviting us. And also thank you, Margo, for your nice words about our services. And I think we will see that our goals will perfectly align. It's all about, making these hidden treasures of Diamond Open Access journals visible. So this is the title of today, Diamond Open Access and EZB, Finding Hidden Treasures. So for those of you who don't know me, who don't know the EZB, my name is Colin Sippl. I'm working here for the Electronic Journals Library, die elektronische Zeitschriftenbibliothek for the German-speaking world. And I'm the IT guy, and I'm working on enhancing, developing, and improving our services. So what is the EZB? The EZB is a cooperative management service for electronic journals, and this management is being done by the EZB community, who are designated administrators. It provides a unified access to electronic journals via its traffic light system, indicating if you have access or not, and also via institutional specific views. So if you are the University of Hamburg, the University of Augsburg, you have different views, and thus you can see different traffic lights if you have licensed a certain journal or not. The EZB also provides a bilingual interface, so you can access it in English as well. And within a DFG-funded project, we've been also adding information on publishing in the last few years. So the EZB is also more or less the German equivalent to the French Mirabel service. And it is part of the UR Library services group, so we have other services as well together with the EZB. We've been working on the EZB since 1979, so it's quite a time, and it's ever since been operated and hosted at the University Library of Regensburg. And as I said earlier, we provide a convenient administration for the institution-specific licenses and thus have a central management for journal packages and collections. So far, we have more than 120,000 electronic journals. Among those are, for example, 855,000 free accessible titles, and our users come to more than 670 institutions, among those more than 140 outside of Germany. So what motivates us? Why are we tagging Diamond Open Access journals in the Electronic Journals Library? Yeah, it's all about finding the hidden diamond treasures and also improve quality indications within the EZB. So until recently, all these scientific publications remained hidden, and so we want these freely accessible treasures that require no fees from either the authors or readers, and that belong to the academic community to be visible. So how can we find those diamonds? How can we find those in the EZB? And how can we ensure that they are visible and remain visible also within the EZB? But this is also a general question, I think, which also addressed Margo already. In this context, I'd like to mention the project we've been working on together with other institutions, and that's the Open Cost project, where we have the goal to establish fairness and cost transparency in the publishing industry through the disclosure and availability of publication costs. And this via the creation of a technical infrastructure with which publication costs can be recorded and made openly accessible. It is a joint project with the University Library of Bielefeld, the DESI in Hamburg, and of course the University of Regensburg. Within the framework of this project, we added journal categories to the EZB, which will become relevant now. We added contact information on the institution pages. So if you open a detailed page for a journal, you can see now if you can publish in this journal the contact information your specific institution provided. So you don't have to search for long on the institution website. You can just see it on the journal detail page in the EZB. This also applies to institution-specific funding options for specific publication costs. You can enter a user-defined text specifically for your institution. And what we also did within the framework of this project was we added the journal-specific information on publishing from the directory of open access journals, which are being shown on the journal detail page. Also, we added a connection to a service that's called OpenAPC. So when you open a journal detail page, and if there are information, you can see the amounts of APCs that have been paid on a global level and also on an institutional-based level. And from the Open Policy Finder, we also show information on secondary publishing. So when it comes to the categories, this is the most important part of how we are labeling Diamond Open Access journals. We have currently several categories in the Electronic Journals Library, and among those, are the most important ones: open access, indexed in the OAJ, journal without APC, Diamond Open Access Journal, and indexed in DDH. And something we will have in the future maybe is CEDOA registered journals. More on that in a minute. These categories are being assigned in two ways. One way is through a collaborative manner via a data management, maintenance, and also via manual assignment. So you can assign in the EZB backend some of these categories manually. And the other thing is the automatic external data import from external data sources, such as, of course, the directory of open access journals, the Diamond Discovery Hub, of course. Also, we have a cooperation with Mirabel, where we indicate every journal that's also being indexed in Mirabel. And we are currently discussing assigning the category of CEDOA registered journals from the CEDOA project. If you like, you can scan the QR code and see an overview of all the categories which are available in the EZB, with this QR code provided in this slide. So a few words to the CEDOA project, which is a rather interesting case. They have the goal of providing a curated list of Diamond open access journals in Germany. And they worked closely with us and also the Directory of Open Access Journals and the ZDB. And finally, the fruit of the work will end up in the Diamond Discovery Hub. So how does this work? They select from among those from EZB data journals and filter them with important criteria to select their candidates. These are journals that are free of charges, that are active, they don't have a moving wall and have an ISSN. And these CEDOA monitored candidates, when they analyze them and they do their work, later they become CEDOA registered journals. So those who qualify, and those journals that qualify later meet every single criteria based on the Kraftwerk DIAMAS operational Diamond open access criteria for journals. So they have 6 out of 6 of this criteria. So I just yesterday talked to Dirk Pieper from this project, and he told me that by the end of the year they are going to publish the final list of this project. So this will be a little bit less than 500 journals, and those are will get to the Diamond Discovery Hub, and from there all the way back to the EZB. And if there are some journals that are not in the EZB from the CEDOA project, we can still add them to the EZB. And this also applies to Diamond open access journals, which are indexed in the Diamond Discovery Hub and you currently can't find in the EZB. So there's also a manual way, which is sort of a heritage thing. You can still assign in the EZB a category of Diamond open access to a journal. And on the left side, you can see a screenshot of a journal detail page for a journal which was assigned manually to be a Diamond open access journal. And you can also access this example by the link provided below. How did it work? Somebody identified this journal and reported it to us, to our administrators, to be a journal of the category Diamond Open Access Journal. It got reported by the community and it was labeled by a designated EZB administrator to be Diamond Open Access. And as soon as a journal is being labeled, it becomes visible to be a Diamond Open Access journal and also becomes visible in the various data services we have. This is sort of a heritage thing because, as we have the same motivation to make diamond open access journals more visible and accessible, we thought it would be a good way to provide technical means that people can assign this category to the journals. That was even before we engaged in cooperation with DDH, etc. So I think currently this is not that relevant, this function, but it is still there, and maybe it can help in future other people who try to identify some candidates for diamond open access and to generate a list, and we later can work on with the DDH, for example, to see which journals are finally able to be indexed in the DDH. So there are basically two ways: the collaborative manual data management, data maintenance, and on the other side, the automated and scheduled data imports. So currently we have in the EZB around 3,700 diamond open access journals, and from those 3,200 are indexed in the DDH currently. And how can you access those this diamond open access treasure in the EZB? Of course, the journal detail page, as I already have shown you. So just below the journal title, you can see those tags, and there you can see which categories a journal is assigned to. And one of those tags shows Diamond Discovery Hub or Diamond Open Access Journal. You can also access this example, of course, via the QR code provided on the slide. But it's not just about the detail page, it's also about lists. So you can open a full list of all the EZB diamonds provided by this link. And this can become quite powerful if you combine this with other filters. For example, if you combine it by filtering it via subject. So you can say, I'd like to see every diamond open access journal listed in the EZB, which is part of the subject philosophy, mathematics, etc. You can also combine some subjects with each other. And this, I think this becomes truly powerful in this way. Of course, we also have a designated list for all the journals currently indexed in that are indexed in the Diamond Discovery Hub and as well in the EZB provided by this link, and you can check it out via the QR code. So you can also access our data via our designated data services, and you can also check out other services which are relying on EZB data, if you like. So I think, to conclude and what are our next steps, the list of Diamond Open Access journals has been improving in the last few months, especially, and has been transitioning to a more reliable source of information. This sounds a little bit self-harming, but it's reliable with the point of view that the provided Diamond Open Access journals comply with the DIAMS Kraftwerk criteria. And this is thanks to the work we had with the Diamond with the directory of open access journals, and of course thanks to the data service and the data import we use from the Diamond Discovery Hub, and everybody who engaged with us in events, in discussions, etc. So it is still work in progress. There are still plenty of journals which currently are indexed in the Diamond Discovery Hub, but currently not in the EZB. So we have to create those records still. And this also will be expanding when the CEDOA registered list finally will be published. And I think, and what I already observed is that this difference between those two lists we have, the Diamond open access journals from the DDH and the Diamond open access journal list we have in the EZB, this difference in number is going to be decreasing until finally these lists are more or less equal, I guess. So yeah, but we're still happy in helping to find new hidden diamond treasures. So yeah, maybe people who are still reporting some diamond journals to us can help with this. And yeah, so we can finally mark more and make more of those hidden gems visible. Yeah, and finally, we also think about yeah, providing those diamond open access journal lists in other formats such as JSON, etc. So that's it.
Thank you, Colin, for your great presentation and for showing about how both platforms can actually work together and highlight each other. I see, Colin, that you have 2 questions for you on the chat. So the first one would be, could you clarify whether there are plans to release the electronic journal library infrastructure as open source, for instance, via GitHub?
No, the application itself, the electronic journals library, can't be released on GitHub, sadly.
Thank you. And the next one is, what's the process for updating journals in the electronic journal library if they become something other than Diamond?
So I think there are various approaches. One is the community-based approach. So people can still contact us and say, okay, look, there's something wrong with this record. It says it's Diamond open access, but it shouldn't be. Please check it. The other thing is on the automated data import level, of course. There are also, I think there have also been changes in the Diamond Discovery Hub, I guess, where some records, some few records got deleted. So we also are going to be, yeah, importing these changes.
Thank you, Colin. Do we have any last question coming from the chat? It could be whether related to Colin's presentation or also to the one we had before. Otherwise, yes, you have one question for you. My journal is in UAG and DDH, but do not appear in, I think, the electronic journal library.
Maybe this is because the electronic journals library still hasn't a record of this journal. So yeah, this might be the case, and we are about to add those records which are still missing. The electronic journals library isn't a holistic database for all ISSN, all journals that have an ISSN. So this is that may cause this issue that some journals are missing, but we are keen on importing all journals that are listed in the DDH.
Thank you, Colin. If there is no more question, I will conclude now. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to all 3 for your all very great presentation about the DDH, about the guide to scholarly indexes, and about the use case. Thank you very much, Colin, for coming here today. If you have any more questions, if you want to follow us, please, you can go and see on the edch.eu website. This is our main portal for the European Diamond Capacity Hub, and you will find all information related to both services, the DDH and the guide to scholarly indexes on it. You can also follow us on our social media on LinkedIn and on Blue Sky. And if you want to keep up to date with everything that is going on in the Diamond OA community, and we know that a lot of things are going on, we have the EDCH forum where you have the link and you can go and create an account and join us. And this is where you can also add your own news and your all events. And yes, will be possible to share the full presentation. I think if you are talking about the presentation and the slides. We'll send them to you all after the webinar, I think along with the recording, so you will have it. Thank you all for joining, and I wish you all a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks
Thank
for the
you.
invitation.
Bye.